More than 60% of those currently incarcerated are people of color. Though African Americans and Hispanics make up approximately 32% of the U.S. population, they comprise 56% of all incarcerated people in 2015. This year's C-SPAN topic is the Constitution and Me. We will be making the connection between preconceived racial disparities in the 14th Amendment and racial discrimination in the criminal justice system. America was not initially founded on the principle of providing equality for all. Despite attempts to create equality through constitutional amendments and individual state action, racial bias has always managed to find its way back into the system. From 1877 to the 1950s, the Jim Crow laws implemented racial segregation in southern states. The idea of the Packer crime control model was released in 1964, a conservative approach to crime involving policies such as increased police presence on a local level, mandatory minimum sentencing, and truth in sentencing. Since the 1960s to today, there has been a significant amount of racial bias within police forces. The unfair and violent treatment of people of color by police officers in recent years leading to the staggering number of black male deaths. The 14th Amendment ensures the equal protection of the law to every U.S. citizen, which encompasses all born or naturalized into the country. Yet every day, due process as it is enacted by the Constitution infringes upon the natural rights technically provided to all U.S. citizens by discriminating against racial minorities through the acts of sentencing, incarceration, and bail. We live in a nation where living constitutionally is ideal, but with this present problem at hand, that cannot happen. The criminal justice system has been in place since the creation of the Constitution, and people have been fighting for and against the system for years. In the 1987 book, The Myth of a Racist Criminal Justice System, author William Wilbanks stated, quote, "I do not believe that the system is characterized by racial prejudice or discrimination against blacks. At every point from arrest to parole, there is little or no evidence of an overall racial effect," unquote. In protest, organizations such as the NAACP, ACLU or American Civil Liberties Union, and more recently BLM or Black Lives Matter stand up for the rights of people of color. But no matter how many protests are held, there is still nothing being done to fix this problem. Bail. The temporary release of an accused person awaiting trial, sometimes on condition that a sum of money be lodged to guarantee their appearance in court.
So the purpose of the pretrial justice system is really twofold. The first is public safety. The second thing, however, is that if you are not a threat to public safety, we just want to make sure that you show up in court and have your day in trial. What the cash bail system does, however, is fail to meet either of those goals. It reduces the question of someone's freedom down to one thing, which is how much money you have. And that has terrific collateral consequences for a lot of innocent people.
Bail is influenced by extra-legal characteristics, quote, including income and social disadvantage, race and ethnicity, sex and gender, and age, unquote.
I was in court not that long ago with somebody who was struggling with some real addiction issues, and I was incredibly lucky to have a very, very good judge. And we really came together to see my client, to see his situation, and to recognize what we had to do to help him. And all of that's extra legal.
When racial disparities are present in due process, it can lead to unjust sentencing, increasing the amount of people of color who serve extensive and sometimes undeserved prison terms. Prison sentencing is, in fact, something that must take place in order to adequately punish individuals for crimes that they commit. But what happens when this fair method of punishment is racially skewed?
Think about all of the ways that black men are policed in the broad sense of the word, heavily and harshly at every step of the criminal process. In fact, black men are policed and treated worse than their similarly situated white counterparts at every step of the criminal justice system, from arrest through sentencing.
Racial disparities in punishment are a byproduct of the operation of a criminal justice system that labors under these conflicting objectives in sentencing and imprisonment. On one hand, there is an attempt to equate the punishment to the crime, a process that will result in racially disparate punishments. Myers, Jr. 60% of those currently incarcerated are people of color. If African Americans and Hispanics were incarcerated at the same rates as whites, prison and jail populations would decline by almost 40%.
Jail. Mass incarceration suggests that a disproportionate number of people of color are subject to this for doing the same offenses that white and other peoples commit.
If we break it down by gender and race, 1 in 17 Caucasian men, 1 in 6 non-white Hispanic men, and 1 in 3 African American men are incarcerated every year. For women, 1 in 56 out of the total U.S. population will go to prison in their lifetime. This includes 0.901% of white women, 2.2% of Hispanic women, and 5.5% of African American women. Despite the disparities held within the criminal justice system, rays of light exist within. There is hope. Hope within the juvenile detention system.
The leaders in the juvenile justice reform movement, what they advocate for is not just to make juvenile detention a better, safer experience. They just try to make it clear that it just shouldn't happen at all. Kids should not be behind bars.
Due process is a very flawed system. Erasing the predisposed and unintentionally constitutionally implemented racial disparities in the criminal justice system will take more than a handful of years. It's the job of all those with power inside the system: judges, police officers, prison guards, juries, attorneys, and other law enforcement officers to break the bonds of those unfairly incarcerated. It's time to let people live free of discrimination.